In a world filled with options, no choice is as crucial as selecting the right primary care doctor. Arch Health and Graybill have joined Palomar Health to create Palomar Health Medical Group, a harmonious blend of medical expertise and family values. Our promise is to create an experience of warmth and compassion, transforming fear into trust. This open enrollment, the right decision is an easy one. Choose a primary care physician that puts your and your family's health first. Choose Palomar Health Medical Group.
St. Augustine versus Madison, live this Friday on YurView.
Believe it or not, week 9 of the high school football season here in San Diego County. We're getting you ready. We got a couple of games for you. Game time on YurView. It is Left Coast Sports with Jon Schaeffer and Jonathan Rifkin as we look back at week 8. We look ahead to week 9. We remind you, as always, this episode brought to you by Palomar Health. Champions aren't made overnight. They're created through practice, determination, and dedication. Palomar Health, champions of healthcare, champions for you. Jonathan, let's start with where you were this past Thursday night. Mount Miguel, El Cap. Big win for Mount Miguel, 46-20. What did you see this past Thursday night?
Well, believe it or not, I actually had to watch this game, John. I was not present for it. So no. I don't want to take anything away from Jack and from Tommy, who did a fantastic job. I was occupied up in Northern County. But going back, watching it on YurView, on watch.yourview.com, my takeaways were, look, Mount Miguel cruised to a pretty solid win with 3 of their best pieces down. And to be able to do that speaks to the depth of this team. They've lost one game. It was to Bishops, probably the best team that they've played so far this year. The best team they're going to play this year. Mount Miguel has elite talent, man. Matthew Barton threw for 6 touchdowns in this game with one of his wide receivers injured. Paris Vernon had 2 scores receiving. The running back David McGowan had over 100 yards rushing. So this team sort of built like USC in that they have a dynamic quarterback. Relatively speaking, for high school, Mount Miguel has a pretty good offensive line. USC doesn't, so we'll gloss over that. But he has these great wide receivers around him. When you give Barton time, I mean, he's going to find you more often than not. And we saw those through the 6 touchdowns this past week against an El Capitan team that really isn't that bad. That's a good team on an upswing, I think, for the Vaqueros. Just could not get it going, especially defensively against Mount Miguel in this game. And I think looking down the road for Mount Miguel, I mean, they're probably sitting comfortably as the best team in Division 4. They have that weak strength of schedule, but if you're killing teams and you're playing down, then I think there's a little bit of proof in the pudding there. They should handle El Cajon Valley and Monte Vista, their final 2 games of the season, probably cruise to that number 1 seed and bye in the Division 4 playoffs. I think they're going to win D4. I think they're going to represent the San Diego section of the state level post this season. But again, this past weekend, down some very significant pieces, and they didn't miss a beat.
Let's talk about some other Week 8 results. We saw Ramona to open the season on YurView, and they took a 27-0 loss to San Marcos. I want to say Jace Nix, the receiver for San Marcos, had a big game. I know Ramona's tailback Adrian Enriquez ran for 100 yards, but they were shut out. What are the implications here? Ramona losing to San Marcos in shutout fashion, 27-0.
Yeah, I mean, Ramona's still trying to find their footing in Division 1. So that right there already is sort of a tough hill to climb, having been shut out in this game, because there's a hint of doubt. And now that Max Preps is being used to see the postseason, that can move Ramona further down. They were sort of on the cusp of the top 20 in terms of rankings here in San Diego. This is going to probably move them down. D1 can get a little tough. We'll see how those last 2 open division spots go. Pretty secure that Lincoln and Carlsbad will be the 1 and 2 seeds come postseason time. But Ramona wants to get into the postseason, and I think they still can. But at 5-3 and getting shut out by San Marcos, probably not going to make things easy on them. And then for the Palomar League, I mean, this is one of the deeper leagues. We look at the Avocado League, and we'll get to that in a moment, talking about Mission Hills and El Camino later, and also recapping Mission Hills and Costa Canyon. Like, that is by far from top to bottom the most difficult league in all of San Diego. But people sleep on the Palomar League. Ramona, San Marcos, Del Norte were all undefeated coming into this weekend. Del Norte beat Mount Carmel 20-10. Ramona gets shut out by San Marcos. So now all of a sudden you have two teams that are undefeated in conference at the top, right? Del Norte, San Marcos. They match up on YurView a week from Thursday. So our final game of the season, that could be for the Palomar League trophy and for the overall number 1 seed in Division 2. But San Marcos has Ramona on Friday. If Ramona wins that game, assuming that San Marcos beats Rancho Bernardo and then Del Norte wins next week against San Marcos, then we have 3 teams at the top of the Palomar League with 1 loss, 2 Division 1 teams and a Division 2 team. I don't know. There's going to be extensive tiebreakers because basically you have that circle of all 3 teams have beaten each other. But it makes things very intriguing and very fascinating. So keep your eye on Friday. Del Norte, Ramona, San Marcos, Rancho Bernardo. That's a big game. Obviously, Eric Weddle's team sneaking out a win against Fallbrook this past weekend. And then that opens up for the implications for our game next Thursday, Ramona and Del Norte. Del Norte and San Marcos.
I don't know how you keep track of all that, but it sounded very good. All right. Jon Schaeffer, Jonathan Rifkin with you here, Left Coast Sports. We're taking a look back at Week 8. We'll look ahead here to Week 9. But you mentioned Mission Hills, La Costa Canyon. Is this an upset, technically? Mission Hills winning over La Costa Canyon 28-21 this past weekend?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the pundits and their rankings, everybody had La Costa Canyon ahead of Mission Hills. So by definition, I guess you could say it's an upset because Max Preps has La Costa Canyon higher. The UT has La Costa Canyon higher. Those are probably the 2 most reputable top 10, top 20 rankings that you're going to find for the San Diego section. And so, yeah, I would say that this is an upset. Now, I don't think that this is an upset because Mission Hills played Carlsbad incredibly well. They've been figuring out their offensive identity. The defense has always been a big question mark. La Costa Canyon is a younger team, sort of on the back 9 here of the regular season, which is crazy. So you got to wonder, there's more of an opportunity to falter and stumble. And La Costa Canyon, they played a great game. I mean, they were up 21-13 rather, with about 4 minutes to go. Mission Hills goes on a 76-yard touchdown drive. It was actually really just a 76-yard touchdown throw from Troy Hunn to his wide receiver, Keaton Smith, to bring them within 2. Then they connect again for the 2-point conversion. It's tied 21-21. Mission Hills gets the stop. They need a touchdown and 96 yards to go to win this football game, and they do it. On the final play of the game, Keaton Smith is in the end zone on a 27-yard touchdown reception, and Mission Hills ekes out a victory against La Costa Canyon. So this is a team that is offensively hot. If its defense can find a way to stop its opponents a little bit more consistently in the first half and give its offense a little bit more time, playing from behind is difficult on a week-to-week basis, which is what Mission Hills has had to do for some of these games. And we'll get into that, how this all factors into our Thursday game against El Camino coming up in a little bit. But overall, this was a really good win for Mission Hills, and I think a convincing one for some people as well.
Yeah, before we get to Mission Hills, El Camino, Mission Hills coming off this win, and before we get to Friday night, Madison, St. Augustine, and then again, you mentioned San Marcos del Norte we're going to have later in October. In terms of the top of San Diego County, are we heading towards another Carlsbad, Lincoln, open division showdown? Is that what is almost inevitable at this point, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's not only the quarterbacks, right? Achilles Smith Jr. and Julian Sain. It's the pieces around them. Drayden Gardner at Lincoln, and the defense. I mean, that's what was sort of slept on coming into the season, as we're hearing about all these skill position players on offense. But man, the defenses have just been unbelievable. I mean, Lincoln hasn't given up more than 12 points except for one game, and that was our game when we saw Modern Day Catholic put up 17, and that didn't even feel like it was a close game, right? Like, that was the most points put up against Lincoln. They killed Cathedral Catholic last week. They went 42-7 against St. Augustine this week. We'll get to them for our Friday game coming up here in a moment. But man, Carlsbad, they've been faltering a little bit. Teams have been figuring out the pro style of offense that they use. Julian Sain, Lincoln a bit more dynamic. Achilles Smith Jr. more of a dual threat quarterback. I think they have more pieces around him at Lincoln than Sain has at Carlsbad. But man, these two teams are in a class of their own. And I would venture that whoever wins the Open Division Championship will take on. Now, I don't know. St. John Bosco beat Mater Dei this past weekend up in Los Angeles, or Orange County, which was I mean, one of the biggest upsets in state history, because St. John Bosco, the 8th ranked team in the nation, modern day, we know number 1 in the nation. So that has implications for San Diego as well, because now all of a sudden the Trinity League, if you have an undefeated team in San Diego and you have a Trinity League team or 2 Trinity League teams with 1 loss to each other, with how Carlsbad and Lincoln have been playing, and I know I'm going long and really in depth on this, John, whoever wins that Northern California, whether it's De La Salle or Concord, whoever wins Northern California, if they're undefeated and we have 1 or 2 lost Trinity League team at the top, we might see a San Diego team against a Northern California team in the state open division championship, which is not something I think we've ever seen before. And there's also a pretty good chance that we see one of those Trinity teams against a San Diego team in the open division championship. So San Diego is positioning itself really, really well, because whoever loses the open division championship, if it is Carlsbad or Lincoln, is still going to be in the Division I AA state championship. So they're still going to have an opportunity to represent the section at the state level, but to have a team in the open division championship and to win it with an opportunity to win it, because I do think Lincoln could be there if the matchup is favorable for them. I mean, that puts this section on the map unlike it's ever been before. So those 2 teams continue to represent the section. We know what happened last year in the open division with Lincoln getting the win. And I do think that they're positioning themselves to take on each other again here soon.
Open division title will be at Snapdragon. Is that right? It was a year ago, so. and I believe it'll be at Snapdragon Stadium coming up later this fall as well. All right, let's look ahead. We got 2 games for you. Game time on YurView back-to-back Thursday and Friday night, beginning Thursday night, October 19th at 7 p.m. Mission Hills off that quote-unquote upset win at El Camino. Should be a really good atmosphere. What are your expectations for Thursday night?
Yeah, this good atmosphere is a really positive way to put it. I mean, El Camino, we talk about environments all the time, and one of the great opportunities that we have with this job is being engulfed in the cultures of the individual schools that we go to, and just how different they are and how much they embrace their own identities. And El Camino is right up there with the cream of the crop here in San Diego, where there's going to be a ton of people through those doors. And Mission Hill's not too far away in San Marcos, right? You're just going a little bit west to Oceanside. They're going to bring a pretty extensive crowd, I would assume, as well. So you have that factored in. And then you have an El Camino team who's hungry. You know, they've only lost twice, John, and one of those losses makes a little bit of sense. They played Mission Viejo, one of the better teams up in Southern Orange County. That was a season opener, so those games you always take with a grain of salt anyways, because it's high school football and the opening games are not necessarily indicative of how the team's going to do the rest of the way, unless like it's a really, really bad loss. But then a couple of weeks ago, they lost to Torrey Pines 23-12. And Torrey Pines has figured out its defense a lot more here in the latter part of this season than we saw maybe the first 4 games for them. But still, to put up only 12 points against that team and losing is a bit of a head scratcher. But other than that, I mean, Carson Howard, the quarterback for El Camino, 66% completion percentage. He has over 1,700 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They also have, by the way, have 2 running backs who have carried the ball for over 400 yards this season, and another running back who has 334 rushing yards this season. But all 3 of those guys are averaging more than 6 yards a carry. So you have Devin Serta, who's also leading the team in receiving yards, over 250 receiving yards this season. He's a Cal Poly commit. He has 3 touchdowns this season. Ray to LA, also over 400 yards, and Leo Bell has the 334 yards. And between the 3 of them, John, they also have 11 touchdowns. So this is a team with depth. They have a quarterback who's consistent. I wouldn't say that their downfield threat offensively is extensively like exuberant. Like, it's not. I think that if you're Mission Hills, your goal is to be behind these receivers and just to try and keep them in front of you. But if that run game gets going, it could really open up the secondary for El Camino, and they could burn Mission Hills a little bit. But again, Mission Hills, we saw last week, they figured it out, especially defensively down the stretch against La Costa Canyon. I would venture that El Camino probably has a better offensive system equipped to beat Mission Hills defense than La Costa Canyon has. But I think that there's a little bit more proof here down the stretch that Mission Hills, especially in that Carlsbad game, I know they lost by 20, but man, when you put up a fight against Carlsbad in the second half on the road, there's valiance that comes with that. And I think that Mission Hills fuels that. And so this is going to be, I think, a very close game and a very fun game on Thursday night.
Could have another close game on Friday night. Now, Madison coming off a blowout loss, St. Augustine coming off a blowout loss to Lincoln. They're going to meet Friday night at St. Augustine. Game 2 of our doubleheader for the week 9, Thursday and Friday night. Our second to last game on YurView this season. How is this one shaping up?
Yeah, Madison came into the season advertised as probably maybe the number 2, number 3 defense in San Diego. They've had a couple of injuries, but you mentioned that they are coming off that blowout to Cathedral Catholic. Not a huge surprise. Cathedral Catholic 3-6. I think that it's a bit of a mislead because they played the number 2 team in Nevada and the number 10 team in Arizona. Like they go out and they play an absolute gauntlet of a schedule. But I think the offense has really been the question mark for Madison. You know, they only put up 20 points against Mira Mesa. They get shut out in back-to-back games against Lincoln and Granite Hills. That's the number 1 and number 3 teams in San Diego. So I think that that's okay. But then their defense faltered in that game against Helix. This was really the game of the week, I think, during week number, 5 of the San Diego season, maybe week number 4. They lost 53-19. And I think that game, combined with the offensive struggles of the next 2 games, Granite Hills and Lincoln, have me questioning the identity of this Madison team a little bit, because we haven't really seen any big offensive explosions other than when they beat Point Loma and Steel Canyon in the first 2 games of the season. And those aren't really, I don't think those were prolific wins. 35 points against Point Loma, 33 points against Steel Canyon. Probably expect a little bit more out of a Madison team that was really highly regarded coming into the season. So this is an opportunity for them, John, to figure it out, to put it together and figure it out. A team that likes to run far more than it likes to throw the football. But I think that we're going to see a bit more continuity again. A St. Augustine team that is also having a precarious season, right? They lost 42-7 against the Lincoln last week. They lost to Modern Day Catholic. Modern Day Catholic finally getting its groove on, like we were sort of alluding to earlier on when we were doing these shows. Only a 32-30 win against Newport Harbor. That's not a great team out of the southern section up there in western Orange County. Losses to Granite Hills. They did beat Poway. That's a good win, but we've learned since that Poway just isn't the team that we thought they were going to be this year. So, St. Augustine doesn't really have a marquee win under their belt. They have a couple of bad losses, and they also have Madison. They have Cathedral Catholic and Madison. Oh, Madison's Thursday. They have Cathedral Catholic to end their season. So this is a really important game for both these teams, for playoff implications, for league implications. Unfortunately, only one team can win. It really is equally as important for both teams. I think what we're looking for here is if St. Augustine and the young offense and that young quarterback Palmer, who's been pretty good, 65% completion percentage, 1,000 passing yards, but 9 touchdowns in 8 interceptions, not going to get the job done. They need to take care of the football. They need to make the most of their drives, and Madison will make you pay if you don't take advantage of your opportunities. So it's going to really be about who could protect the football and who can move the ball more consistently. And really, who wants this one more? Because again, like one of these teams could get knocked out of the postseason opportunity with this game.
And then finally, we've got this game coming up that you kind of previewed earlier, this October 26th game, which could be huge, San Marcos and Del Norte. But from a Del Norte perspective, because you've been covering this team all year and doing their play-by-play, and they've lost just once. They're coming off a victory this past week, and I know their quarterback, Jack Schneider, was really good again. What are you seeing right now from Del Norte as we head towards the backstretch of the regular season?
Yeah, they get a lot of flags. We've seen some undisciplined play the last few weeks. Misdirection really gets their defensive line, I've learned. And now Carmel sort of figured that out. Rancho Bernardo really put that in effect. But the pieces are there. I mean, they have this freshman, Anthony Matara, who's a running back, who is he's doing PA for the freshman games. He speaks Mandarin. He could have gone to Helix. He could have gone to Madison, chose to go to Del Norte, and he is the most prolific underclassman running back in San Diego. And on top of that, they have Ryan Remigio, a junior, and Chris Guzman, a senior. And all 3 guys are rushing for over about 300 to 500 yards this season, depending on who you're looking at. So you have running back depth. You have Ty Olson, one of the more prolific wide receivers in San Diego, and Jack Schneider, who's as consistent as they come, and he doesn't turn over the football. So this is a team offensively that can probably contest with anybody else. You put them up there with almost outside of Lincoln, outside of Carlsbad. I think you can, Granite Hills is probably the ceiling for where you could get this, what you get out of the skill position players offensively for Del Norte. The defense is rough. Soft coverage a lot of times on receivers. They give up big plays up the middle. They're pretty good on the ground though. The defensive line, when they hold between Adrian Gonzalez and Khalid Farah, 2 guys who are going to be playing on Saturdays pretty soon, it's difficult to run against them. So if they can get at quarterbacks and apply pressure, disrupt the passing game that way. But the secondary is definitely weak. So they need to rely on putting up big points if they're going to beat some of these more prolific offenses. Ramona doesn't have a prolific offense, so I think they could get the win this Friday. San Marcos, a different story. Jason Hicks, he's just built different. That guy is unbelievable at the wide receiver position. And San Marcos is just so well coached. So that will be a really good game coming up on Thursday. And again, implications all over the place. I think Del Norte is probably locked up the number 1 spot in Division 2, but you want to go in the postseason momentum. San Marcos still vying for a top 20 ranking in San Diego, probably top 15. And they have Rancho Bernardo this Friday. That's not an easy game either with Eric Weddle in town. So that game is going to be full of implication, intrigue. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's their first time these two teams have ever played in a conference game. And yeah, we're going to have that for you on YurView next Thursday.
First things first, again, join us this week. Game time on YurView. Thursday night, Jonathan will be there. Mission Hills, El Camino. Friday night, I will be there. Madison, St. Augustine. And again, this episode brought to you by Palomar Health. Champions aren't made overnight. They're created through practice, determination, and dedication. Palomar Health. Champions of healthcare, champions for you. Jonathan, great stuff. Let's do it again next week. We're heading down the back stretch here in the regular season, and we'll do it again a week from now.
Don't let it end, John. Let's do this every week forever.
I like it. All right. For Jonathan Rifkin, my name is Jon Schaeffer. You've been watching Left Coast Sports, presented by Palomar Health.